This podcast shares stories inspired by real EMS events highlighting experiences of emergency medical service professionals. To respect patient privacy and comply with HIPAA regulations, all personal and medical information has been thoroughly redacted or replaced. Listener discretion is advised, and the content is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The creators of this podcast assume no responsibility for any actions taken as a result of information or stories provided. Thank you for your understanding and for joining us. My name is Sunny.
And I'm Nathan.
And let's dive into today's story. One evening, emergency medical services makes its way to a quiet neighborhood. The faint sound of crying and screaming becomes louder as they walk towards the house. They enter the room to see a mother holding her baby with tears running down her face. Rescue efforts ensue, but it was too late. What had happened, you ask? Mother had fallen asleep next to her newborn baby, and during her nap, she rolled over onto the baby and suffocated her child.
No.
Yeah. So, welcome to Egg and Bean Podcast. I know this is a doozy and a heavy one, but welcome to the podcast where we take a story and turn it into a conversation. And inspired by our story today, we're diving into the fears of parenthood.
That's so scary.
It's very sad. Yeah. And when I've, heard about this, I didn't know what to think at first, just like you, I was like, just
like your heart drops a little.
Yeah. And I think there's so many layers to this story, right? Of course, the baby,
Mm-hmm.
You have the mother, their family members, of course, but you have the EMS professionals in this during this call. So what are your initial thoughts, Nate?
Like if I were to show up on scene?
Let's start with that. If you were the EMS professionals who showed up on scene as an EMT, you show up and this is what's happening. What do you do?
That's a tough scene.
Yeah.
Because there's really nothing you could do.
Right. Yeah. Because it's at that point there was, I'm sure they did what they could, but there's a certain point where you no longer can, really save the child anymore. And I think what's hard about these calls too is you as a professional understand that there is nothing that you can do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have family members, as they should, screaming and crying at you to save it
and watching you.
Yeah. To save the baby. What do you do?
You would honestly just do what you can at the moment so that the family member sees that you guys tried everything that you can to get the baby back.
Yeah.
And if everything has been exhausted, then that's when you can call it.
Yeah. So now, of course, as EMS professionals, it's a common thing in the field where we talk about how pediatric calls are the worst calls usually, right? And it's the most heartbreaking and because of, multiple reasons, which include that one, right? Which there's just sometimes nothing that you can do. And it's usually, I don't know how to say this, but I think because when you see death to the extent that you do sometimes, in this field, or you're around it, or just kind of the things that lead up to it, sometimes death in itself almost doesn't faze you, right? Unfortunately, you do kind of get used to it, right? Not in the sense where you get tired of it, right? Not you're used to it.
It's not something of non-importance to you, but it's
yeah. Of course it's important,
right?
It
is important.
Yeah, it's important, but it's not as shocking, I guess, as those of us outside of EMS. However, I think these calls, they just hit different, right?
They do. Because when you think of death, you think of somebody that's already experienced life, somebody that's already older in age. But when it comes to babies, they've experienced nothing and they're such a young age, so innocent, and it sucks. It's worse. Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was going somewhere with my first statement and I lost it. Because anyways, it's not that death is unimportant, like you said, but these, when I don't know how to even say it. I'm sorry. I need
it's all right.
a second.
It's a tough topic.
Yeah, it is a tough topic. And I've again, I prepared this topic, but now as I'm saying it again, it's like, it's a lot, right? And I know, like, for those guys who have children, right, or have, everybody has been around babies at some point. We are all babies at one point, but I can't imagine like being like the mother in this situation specifically, right? Because to have your child pass away in itself is an awful thing. I've never experienced it, but I can only imagine how awful that is. But to almost be the cause of it, like, I'm going to use that phrase lightly, right? But to feel like you were the reason why is, I feel like, an unimaginable amount of pain, right?
Yeah.
And I think the conversation or the questions around this is, once I kind of got over the shock of it, I kind of started thinking, I was like, okay, who's responsible, right? Not that like she is responsible for it, but is this a case? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to have to be investigated. Anything with kids dying, it's something that should be investigated, because you never know nowadays. Right.
And I actually asked a sheriff that I ran into recently, and I asked them, I was like, hey, say this happened, right? Hypothetically. Like, do you guys pursue that? Right. And his response basically told me that sometimes it's up to like the sheriff's discretion almost.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel like they do their due diligence to investigate, of course, like, given that is actually what happened, right? Because there are probably cases where it could not have, they could be lying. Like a cover-up story. Yeah, it could be a cover-up, but they do their due diligence. But I mean, I think if let's say that is what they find out is happened, sometimes like they may or may not pursue it as like a case. Yeah.
That's tough though. How do you decide? Like, what are the deciding factors on that?
Right. And I just think that, like, newborn babies especially are so delicate. Like, and I really started thinking about it. I was like, okay, because I was thinking about like all the things that I would never say. Right. But being on the internet for so long, whenever you see anything regarding these things, like, and you look at the comments, like, everybody has something to say about it, right? And there's people who will sometimes like blame parents, or like, oh, well, you should have been more careful, whatever. But I feel like at the end of the day, like, nobody really knows how to be a parent, no, right? Like, I mean, neither of us have kids, right? So we don't know. But I think about it, and if I were to have a child, it's not like we have a handbook. No. Of how we can do our research, we can learn as much as we can, but there's only so much. But, this really, for me, what I got out of this was, if I do have a child in the future, I'm like, first of all, that baby's going in the crib like 24/7.
So do you want kids?
Well, I feel I'm unsure at the current moment. Funny story about, like, we'll go back to that, but funny story about me wanting to have kids is when I was younger, I actually wanted kids really badly. Like, when I was, before I turned 21, I was so dead set on having kids.
Before you were 21?
Yeah. Before. Yeah. It was weird. When I was younger, I was like dead set. I really, really, really wanted kids. I had my whole life planned out. It went like, when I'm 23, I'm going to be married. When I'm 23, I'm going to be married. Just picture this. 16-year-old Sunny in her room, writing in her little diary.
Oh my God.
And I go, when I'm 23, I'm going to be married. And then when I'm like 24, 25, I'm going to have kids. I want 2 kids. Yeah. I'm 24 now. And my mind has been changed.
You can't even keep a plant. So
I can't even keep a plant alive, first of all, let alone a child. And I think turning 24 healed my relationship with my mom specifically, because she was around 23, 24 when she had me. And she, was so young.
Yeah, that's really young.
Right? Like, when I was younger, I didn't really think about that. Right? But now that I'm 24 and I realize that this was the age that she had me, You're really, like, yeah, literally, like, it put perspective to what she was, doing. And there are people who have kids even younger, right? So
my mom had me at 19, 20. Yeah. Like 19 or 20.
But can you imagine being that young? And, and so I think it healed a lot of the resentment that I had because you begin to have so much more empathy and compassion for what they did, for how well, honestly, they did. Because you know what? You did a great job, Mom. You know, you killed it.
Yeah, when I was 23, I did not do as good as them.
Yeah. And I can sit here and nitpick, oh, well, I didn't feel like really supported in like this period of my life or blah. But for real, I think, at least for me, in my situation, I feel very, very blessed and I appreciate everything that she did. And, you know, not everyone's perfect. I think growing up also means realizing that your parents aren't perfect, right?
Yeah, but your mom did a great job.
I'll tell her that. No, I do very much appreciate it. I think when you're younger, I really, you know, for a while, I do still sometimes, but I look back and I feel very bad for ever feeling any sort of negative resentment towards my mother about anything that she did, right? You know?
Yeah.
She did her best. And she did well, very well for like the most part, right? And like she has her own trauma, like there's generational trauma. She didn't grow up, she was an immigrant, you know? She came here when she was you know, like 19, like 17, like around that age, yeah. And learned English, you know, learn the area, had to basically learn a whole new culture, new like country, everything, new environment. And while having a kid a couple years later, basically.
And it was you.
Yeah. It was me, right? of all, she got stuck with me. So, but anyways, do you feel like growing up has helped you, you know, appreciate parenthood a little bit more?
I think so. Especially like the point that you made, thinking about back at the age that my parents had me, they were 19. When I was 19, like something that I thought was like, this is the first time I was 19. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, a kid, like that's really tough.
Right.
But I understand like all the rules and stuff that my parents implemented on me, because there's a lot of bad people out there. Like they wouldn't let me sleep over at people's houses, not because of like they were bad influences like the kids or anything, but because of like the adults that stayed there. Right. They were worried that they would do something. Right. And I get that now.
You just beat me to the punch, because that's where I was going to go into next is like, do you now understand why your parents were so worried about everything?
Oh, yes.
Because when I was younger, right, my whole life, as you know, up until pretty much recently, I never understood. I was like, why are you being like this? Like, why are you so strict?
Why can't I go
like
shopping with my friends?
Yeah, like why can't I go out? And then I'm getting, you know, maybe it's partially like due to the job or just growing up. Like you see the amount of things that just happen randomly. First of all, like there are of course like intentional crimes, but then there are things where you're just going about your day, and like something can happen.
She gets snatched up out of nowhere.
well, those are like intentional crimes, but like say like you went to go grab a bite, go get some pizza or something, and then someone just happens to be mad at someone and starts shooting up the place. You don't know that, right? That's a very harmless thing to do, is go get pizza.
You're right. You never know what's going to happen.
You just never know. And I think that's what I mean by like, I have so much more appreciation or understanding of what like my parents were going through. Like every time I left the house, it was probably a nerve-wracking experience for them. Right. And you have a younger sister.
Yes. I was about to say that.
Beat you to the punch there. We're just taking turns.
Your turn, huh?
Yeah. But you have a younger sister, and do you ever feel like how your parents probably felt about you with her?
Yes. Now that she's actually learning how to drive.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yes. I'm terrified for it. I'm always testing her. I'm like, which one's the brake? Which one's the gas? Like,
did you make it home? Text me when you're home.
No,
like, where
but
are you going?
She doesn't drive by herself yet, but she's getting to that point. And that's where I'm scared.
Okay.
Of like just her off into the wild, just doing whatever she wants.
So it's funny that you bring that up, because when I was 16 or so, that's when I first got my driver's like permit and everything, right? Yeah. And I, for the life of me, could not understand why my mother wouldn't let me drive.
You're an adult.
I was so angry. Like when I tell you just how angry I was, I don't even think I can begin to tell you how angry I was. Like I was like fuming out of both my ears, like steam was coming out, because she was just like giving me such a hard time about it, basically. And it was a rough period. Like I think around when I was like 15 to like 19 range, that was rebellious? I think it was more so like me wanting so badly to have anything of my own, right? And I think that like I just felt constantly like my mom had a hand in everything I did, and I was so dead set on having my own identity, having my own decisions, my own blah blah blah, right? Yeah. And driving was one of them. Driving to me was, I can now make my own decisions. Like now I can go out and do wherever I want. I can go wherever I want. I want to do whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Listen, I get it now, Mom. Listen, you should not have let me out into the world. The day I got my driver's license was the day that the world pretty much ended, honestly.
That's what I'm afraid for my sister. See, you're not helping me.
No, okay, honestly, I'm exaggerating. I, for the most part, was safe, right? Mm-hmm. I lived in a decently safe area. But now, on top of that, it's another layer. I understand why parents want to live in safer areas for their kids, right? Or just the education there, whatever. Of course, if they have the privilege or the financial ability to do so. Mm-hmm. I understand that not everybody has that privilege. But I think most parents, not all, most parents do want the best for their kids, right? Now, we're not going to get into the people who don't, because there are a lot of cases of that. And that makes me very sad, right? Because even for my friends, I want the best for you. And so to think that like a parent would not want the best for their kid or just do not care is very sad to me.
Depressing.
Yeah.
Because they're like you.
Yeah.
They're a part of you, and you created this person. Right. How can you not love it? Yeah. And like, that's why like cases like the child abuse cases, the Gabriel Hernandez case. Yes.
That documentary wrecked me. Like I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just laughing because it's just,
you can't go through the
dude, it wrecked me. It wrecked me that it was hard to even just watch the whole thing. Of course, those are extreme cases. I would argue that, majority of parents aren't doing that to their kids. But I do think that there's so many layers to parenthood, and it makes me scared. Like I have a younger brother as well, and he is a full adult. He's an adult. Like, how old is your sister?
My sister's 16.
Okay, yeah. No, my brother's a full adult, right? How old is he? He is 21.
Oh, he's an adult.
And he's an adult. But I swear, I feel the same way. Like, to me, he's like my baby brother, right? Like, he's my little baby brother forever, even though he's towers over me and is like twice my weight.
So, you're 23?
4.
24, yeah. He's 21?
Yeah.
Do you guys still fight, like, if you're younger, like little siblings?
We don't fight, actually, anymore.
Or bicker?
We bicker, yeah. We used to fight a lot, but we don't bicker anymore. But it's now, I have this, like, protective, like, stance over him, But I'm also very proud. Like, any little thing he does, I'm just so proud of it. For no reason. Like, the other day, he was... he went to a little, like, get-together Halloween, whatever, right? And I was so proud for what? I was like, oh, look at my little baby brother out in the wild, having a good time in college. Like, what? I'm not his mom.
Basically.
But I feel like it, right? Yeah. And sometimes, like, I'll ask him questions and, just think back and go, why am I acting like his parent? Like, those aren't my questions to ask, really. But I was like, oh, how'd you get home? How are you going to get there? Be safe, like,
Yeah. You know what's funny? My parents actually came up to me one day. They were like, hey, your sister seems to respond better to you. Yeah. Can you give her some advice on this?
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, though, because think about when you were young, right? Like, you probably didn't want to hear what your parents had to say about certain things, because in your head, you'd be like, oh, well, you're my mom. You have to say that. You have to say that, or you're saying that because you're trying to control me, right? Whereas when your sibling, especially if you have a good relationship with your sibling, says it, it's more digestible, I guess is the word, a little bit, and you can actually hear it. I think with your parents, whenever they say anything, especially at like a high school age, it's
because to them, like, they're always nagging.
Yeah,
to you.
You're just nagging, Mom. Yeah. You're just nagging, right? Just nagging. Shut up.
Your teen years came out a little.
Yeah, I did. I was an interesting teen.
Yeah?
Yeah. What about you?
I was pretty calm.
You were?
I never ditched school. I was not the brightest, but I was good. I was a good kid. I was a farmer.
I'm sorry. Wait. I was about to say something and you said what?
I was a farmer in high school.
Oh my God. Like, and what do you mean in what way?
So my high school had an actual farm, like an agriculture area.
Okay.
And there was cows, sheep, pigs, there's everything. And I took that class. I had like 3 or 4 classes in that area.
You're still a farmer. I see you with your plants.
I'm still a farmer. Yeah,
I see you with your plants. How many plants do you have now?
Too many to count. My whole backyard's filled with them.
Yeah.
They're hanging everywhere, planted everywhere. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And it all started in high school. I took horticulture, learned the science behind
so
plants.
you're plant daddy.
Yeah. Whoa.
So you are a parent.
Plant poppy.
Oh, plant poppy. So do you feel the same? Do you feel like a parent to your plants?
I talk to my plants.
You talk to your plants?
I'm like, oh my God, you're getting so big. Wow.
Do you feel proud, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if your plants died under your watch?
Under my watch?
Yeah. Like, what if you, for some reason, neglected your plant and it passed away?
Ugh, that happens.
It's sad, no?
It is sad.
But imagine that with a real child.
You know, I was thinking about the story about when you said to flip over.
Yeah.
Like, it has no similarities, but when I'm sleeping, sometimes like I flip over.
Yeah.
And my cat's there. And my cat like no, like I feel bad.
But your cat does it wiggle its way out?
Oh no, my cat's fine.
Okay.
Sometimes I kick my leg, it lands on his head. I feel bad.
That's what I'm saying.
Like I am not fit to have kids, Sonny.
Dude, honestly, like I don't even because. We're going to go back. I'm sorry. We're kind of jumping back and forth because that's kind of how our brains work. And we're not trying to be insensitive.
Unhinged.
Yeah. And insensitive or unhinged. But yeah, going back to that, it's like, you know, I'm sure a lot of people on the internet would probably be like, oh, well, like, why didn't you put the baby in the crib? Like it's newborn. You shouldn't have put it on the bed, blah, blah, blah. Like almost like victim, blame kind of. But like you said, it's sometimes, I'm sure she's tired. She just gave birth, right? Like, I don't honestly know the general like details of it, but like to play devil's advocate, I've never given birth, but I can only imagine how exhausting that is. Right.
It takes a physical toll on the body.
It's traumatizing. Mm-hmm. And then you go home after this exhausting experience of after carrying not just like birth, but carrying the child for 9 months, right? Or so about there. And then you have to wake up every couple hours to feed the baby, right? Take care of the baby. I'm sure she's exhausted.
Yeah.
At this point, just giving this mother like the benefit of the doubt, right? Like there's just so many things that like you can't control. And I really doubt that she was intentionally trying to do anything to her child. No. And, but yeah, that's what I'm saying is like, I feel like I would be so overprotective. I would just be like, you're in a crib 24/7, which honestly isn't even good for the kid anyways.
No. Then they get like a flat head.
Yeah, you have to like turn.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There's like 10 million things. I swear it's like, oh, you got to like turn the baby on the side so its head doesn't get flat and it doesn't look like a pancake, Like
I've always said the human baby, it's like the most useless baby. Like why can't they come out like cows, like ready to just run in the field?
Yeah. I mean, even what is it like baby horse? They take a second.
Baby horses, they're
a little wobbly, right? But then they just start standing up.
Give it like 2 minutes. He's good.
Yeah, so I think there's just like so many things over the years I've heard, whether you should breastfeed the baby, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you should, whether formula is okay, what kind of air the baby's breathing, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
And I recently was listening to Stephanie Sue's podcast, Rotten Mango. If you guys don't know it, love that podcast and one of my favorites.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's like my favorite actually. But she covered a case in Korea that I'm going to briefly go over it. But basically, in Korea, it's very dry, right? And so it's very common that they use humidifiers during like, especially like the dry months or like winter months, right? Anyways, long story short, there was a bunch of humidifiers that were being used. And like there was this huge I wouldn't call it scandal, but they basically, there was this news article, like health news article that was like, hey, like you should make sure you clean your humidifiers because if you don't clean it, like there's going to be a bunch of mold that grows in it. And then you're you're basically, aerolizing it into the air. Right. And so this company, I guess, was selling humidifier cleaners. Right. Oh. And so a lot of people were buying it. But what they didn't know was that in these humidifier cleaning products, there was just harsh chemicals. It was a rug cleaner. And so it was humidifying into the air or aerolizing into the air. And all these babies were inhaling it. And so many passed away. It was, I would say like 10 years ago or something like that. Yeah. I don't remember exactly the time frame. Yeah. So a bunch of babies and some mothers who were, exposed to it.
And that's like the unintentional stuff you were talking about.
That's what I'm saying is like these mothers,
I'm stressed.
Bro, these mothers are actually like being proactive.
Yeah.
Like they're, oh, my baby it's too dry, right? I'm going to buy a humidifier. I'm going to put it even closer to their face because I want them to be healthy. And their baby basically passes away due to that. Like you could do everything in your power and you just like never know. Like I'm just like I'm terrified. Like I'm terrified. I think this is just as I get older, I don't want kids anymore because I'm so scared. It's a lot, no? Because you can worry about all these things, right? I can sit here and do all my research, but there are things that are just going to happen.
It's just accidents.
Yeah.
It sucks.
We're going to take a quick break and digest this very hopeless story the hopeless path we're going down. And we'll be right back. Like we were saying, parenthood, crazy time. You'd never know. Okay. Think about everything that you could be in danger of.
Everything.
That's your child, right? It's just insane, right? And I think even beyond that, during my time as an EMT, I have had a decent amount of pediatric calls. Mm-hmm. And, I would say most of the time, thank God, it's just typical.
It's cute.
Yeah. They're sick, but they're not, it's nothing life-threatening.
Yeah.
The flu or something, pneumonia. Pneumonia could be life-threatening, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And oftentimes during these calls, I will just kind of talk to the mom and I'll ask the mom questions because I'm curious, right? As a woman, these things are interesting and informational for me. Mm-hmm. And, growing up, I would only be able to really ask my mom about her birthing stories. So I would ask them, I'd be like, hey, how was your pregnancy? How many kids do you have? Mm-hmm. Just kind of strike up conversation with them. And through these conversations, I've learned a lot, right? Starting with the fact that, I didn't know that you couldn't really like pee or poo properly after you give birth.
I would assume so.
Right, I would assume so, but I didn't know it was that bad. And there's varying cases of it.
What do you mean? So
some people, it's worse for some people and it's worse for others, depending on what kind of birth you had, right? Like a C-section versus, a natural birth, right? And that in itself is a whole conversation, right? Like C-section or natural birth, right? And then you have all these other like more superficial fears of stretch marks and just overall random things. Like my mom, for example, her whole hormonal, functions and everything changed.
Again?
Yeah. So you apparently can develop allergies to certain things.
Really?
Yeah. Just weird things happen to you during pregnancy.
Like the diabetic pregnancy stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of actually not normal, but pretty common. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I've mentioned this before. My mom's feet grew 2 sizes. Just like weird stuff. You gotta
buy new shoes for you and your kids.
Imagine like you're a whole adult. You're a grown woman and let's say, your feet haven't really grown since you were 15.
Yeah, they shouldn't, right?
Right. And so you have this whole collection of shoes and you have a child and you can't wear them anymore. Right? Of course, this is such a superficial thing compared to the other ones, but I'd be a little bit upset, no?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit upset if I can't fit them anymore. Especially people who are, shoe people. I feel like that would be the worst.
Sneakerheads?
Yeah, like sneakerheads. Oh my God, imagine. Okay, but low key, you could sell that and make a fortune. But yeah, like weird stuff. Weird stuff in parenthood that just boggles my mind.
And it's also like, it's scary to think about like the complications you could have after birth. You
could fully die, first of all, during it. Like, I think people think that because of the medical advancements that we have these days.
But it's still a risk.
No, you could, there's DVTs, right? You can get a clot, right? It can shift a clot, something, and you can just die. I've actually heard that.
The position of the baby could be wrong, and they could be like breech to birth with one limb.
Being strangled by the, my mom was actually, the wrong way. Like, so her feet were, so you have to be, you usually go head first. So she was feet first. So a doctor reached in to my grandmother and swirled her around and pulled her out.
You can do that? There's enough room in there?
Yeah.
Some prime real estate.
I think this was also like back in the day a little bit, you know?
Yeah, because that's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. You can get the umbilical cord can strangle the baby. Listen, I don't even want to get to like the horrors of carrying a child for however long and it being born stillborn, miscarriages, right? I've seen it wreck. I've heard of, personal stories and, just through the grapevine of these stories, it's sad.
It is sad.
It's so sad.
And there's this call that I ran. This is something I've never thought of, but there was complications after birth with the baby. And they weren't breathing as good as they should have. So the mother had to stay at the hospital.
Right.
And we had to transport the little baby preemie to another hospital.
Right.
So that time, like the mom didn't know what was happening to the baby. And that must be super stressful.
It's so stressful. Like you just gave birth and the baby's getting shipped off, by ambulance to another hospital and you have no idea what's going on.
No. And what's interesting is how delicate these babies are, because there's something that I learned with these neonatal transports is if they get too much oxygen, they could actually go blind. And that's because their blood vessels in their eyes will constrict and it will lead to blindness.
That's just so many things you don't know about.
Yeah.
I mean, I work in the medical field. I don't even know that. Right. So, that's all I have to say to that. It's so scary. There's so much anxiety surrounding having a child. And again, going back to how much appreciation I have for my parents now that I'm older and understanding that. And I think, we do have a lot of younger viewers or older, right? Yeah. But trust me, I was there once. I was once 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, right? And I didn't appreciate my parents for what they do. I know some of y'all were ahead of Nate and I, and have always appreciated your parents. God bless you. Yeah, you are amazing, right? For understanding that. But it took me a good amount of time to actually understand that. But I'm glad I finally do.
Yeah, I'm glad we both did.
Yeah, because it's a scary, scary thing to go through. And I'm sure every second is just there's a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
A lot of anxiety. Yeah.
Related.
Yeah. I think this brings up an interesting topic. I've always thought that we should offer like parenting courses or just like what to expect, how the basic concepts or foundations of child development.
In school, right?
Not just in school, but for parents, right? Like if you're thinking about having kids or during pregnancy even. You have
part of like your checkup stuff.
Right. Like part of your checkups, of course, you go in and make sure the baby's okay, you're okay, everything. But if there was some way that we could somehow implement an educational course or resources, even just kind of flyers or papers to read, for our parents.
Yeah.
I know you can go to like Barnes and Nobles and buy your own books and like online, but I think if it was a part of your checkup process when you go see your OBGYN or whatever your like general physician.
Just make it more accessible.
Just make it a little bit more accessible and actually put it in front of them. I think, yes, they are clinical providers, but I think it doesn't hurt to also offer educational resources, and overall promote the public health of the community, right? So that's for another conversation, of course, of what we can do. But I think that might be helpful. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, that also, as much as there are parents out there who are willing to take every resource that they can, there are those who don't.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like right now we're talking about all, the population of parents who really are doing everything for their kids, but there really isn't. There really is just a population of people who don't.
It's
and
sad.
yeah, and I think we see it all the time. I mean, I see it down in the grocery store sometimes, right? And it's not that we should ever shame parents for like the way that they raise their kids, unless they're like really hurting them. Of course, that's different. We're not talking about that population, but do you ever feel like there's gray areas in parenthood that a lot of people like to attack other parents for? So just like differences in parenthood, like give unsolicited advice for other parents. Like, oh, well, you don't scold your kids enough, or oh, you should hit your kids, or you shouldn't hit your kids, right? It's gray area, right? Yeah. Of course, I'm not talking about like suggesting that you do anything really bad to your child, but there's like gray area things where you know that parents will kind of judge other parents for doing.
I think that happens a lot with like Latino families.
They'll judge.
Yeah, they'll judge and tell you like what you're doing wrong and what you could be doing better.
So like your aunts will tell your mom like, oh, you're not raising Nathan right.
Yeah, or my grandma.
Yeah. Well, that's not how I raised you. You're not doing it right. Yeah. I think that's like general. That's a good point. You have generational differences in parenting, one, and then just overall the general trends of parenting. Because I don't know if you've seen this, but there's that conversation on gentle parenting these days. Have you heard of that?
No.
So gentle parenting basically is, I don't really know how to, but let me try to sum it up. It's, forgive me if I'm not, correct in this definition, but from what I understand about gentle parenting, it's approaching your kid with compassion and kindness and understanding instead of punishment. So you know how I'm sure both of our parents, whenever we did anything wrong, it's like, okay, come here. Like, I'm going to slap your hands, like go time out. Right. Yeah. Like there's some sort of consequence or punishment, discipline. Right. I think gentle parenting is an approach where, if the kid doesn't want to take a bath, for example, instead of screaming at the kid or, forcing the kid to do it, I think their approach is basically, hey, like, let's talk about like why you don't want to, like, what do you have any fears, or are you scared of it? Like, what are your feelings? Like, let's try to understand, to kind of meet the kid at like where they're at, try to understand and then maybe, eventually talk it through. So then they will on their own accord go take a shower, for example. So it's kind of, I think that's basically what I understand gentle parenting to be.
And it's funny because that's kind of how I communicate to kids. Like the way that I talk to a normal like adult, that's how I talk to a kid.
Yeah.
And usually, I remember when I was a kid, I would think like, why don't they just tell me straight up like how it is?
Okay. So would you agree with, would you like to incorporate? Yeah, I think.
I agree with it. Because saying, hey, so why don't you want to take a bath? Because it's going to take long. Like, well, you're going to smell.
Right. Or like how can we make this go by faster for you? Like we kind of go, I think gentle parenting, like the concept of it is great. I think sometimes the execution may be the problem, because I've seen people talk about how it can, if you don't do it correctly, it can be enabling. Like you becoming like you're kind of like just letting the kid. Yeah, you're kind of letting the kid do whatever the kid wants, and so I think the concept of it is great, but the execution might be a very hard thing to do. Kind of like a balance act. Yeah. Right? I don't know, because I think about like if I did have kids, right? Like how would I parent them? A lot, actually. And I go back and forth on it because I want to incorporate some of the things I've understood about gentle parenting, because I think it creates very emotionally intelligent and healthy children. I also want to, you know, create a like environment for them to to allow them to reach their potential, right?
Mhm.
And for them to do well in all of this. But I feel like this might be a generational thing where sometimes I think about, okay, well, if let's say my kid isn't succeeding or doing well, how would I feel about it? And at this current moment, dare I say, I'd be a little bit upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, then that's kind of why I don't think I'm either not ready or I shouldn't have kids.
You put too much pressure on
Because,
little
you
Timmy.
know, yeah, because I'd be like, why aren't you doing this well? Why aren't you, you know? I get it. I get the wanting your kid to succeed. So I'm a little scared.
But that kid is not somebody for them to like reach the dreams that you had.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's the point that I try to like understand. So you know what? I don't think I should have kids. I should not have a child to traumatize it, basically. Do you ever get scared to traumatize your kids that you're going to?
I'm scared that if I do have a kid, that's going to be like how you said, I'm not going to know what to do. I'm not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And I might do the best that I think it is, but it might be the wrong decision later on.
Yeah. But then I think about how this is totally kind of half a joke, but I think about how funny we are because of our trauma.
Add a little spice to it.
You know, so I mean, a lot of my friends, like we've all gone through our own struggles with just the way we were raised, like our childhoods and everything, and we make jokes out of it. It's funny, right? At the end of the day, we joke around about it. So what if like they lose a little bit of spice?
They're boring. You raise a boring kid.
They're like too healthy.
Do something. Come on.
I'm kidding. And it's like totally just a random impulsive passing thought in my head. Don't judge me for it, please.
No judgment here. It's a no judgment zone.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of shaming around parenting, and I think that's also why I'm a little scared too.
Yeah, I think you'd be a good mom.
Do you?
Yeah, you'd be all right.
I don't know. I think my kids might come out really wonky.
It's funny. That's obvious.
Yeah, they're gonna be really weird. You know, because we, as much as we can teach them certain things, they mirror you.
Yeah,
and I'm weird.
You're pretty weird. Man.
I'm weird. I'm gonna have like a Sunny 2.0, just so weird. Do you have baby names picked out?
Me?
Yeah. Or like names that you... Okay, what were they?
Sophia and Caleb.
Sophia. Okay.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah, I think I've gone back and forth. Like throughout the years, I've thought about them and they change all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Megatron. Destroyer of worlds.
This sounds so stupid, but I love Top Gun, right? And I was like, I want to name my kid. No, Maverick's a little too much. But Miles?
Miles?
That's so embarrassing.
I remember a kid named Miles in elementary.
And you didn't like him? Okay, fine. No Miles. Okay. I guess, let me ask you this. If you ever saw a parent doing something that you didn't agree with, would you ever give unsolicited advice?
Ooh, like...
Okay, let's start with family. Let's start with a family member. Like, let's say your sister, like in the future, right, has a child, and you didn't agree with the way that like your sister was parenting your kid.
So if it was my sister, I would give her advice.
You would give, okay, unsolicited. You just go in and straight up say it.
Oh,
that's what I'm asking. Is if she asks, that's different, right? She's asking, right? But what if she never asked?
What if it's something that she's not aware of? Like, what if it's just something that she's like blinded to?
I feel, okay, here's the thing. This is where I draw the line. If I feel like it's something that's actually dangerous to the child, I would say something unsolicited, right? I would just say it, right? However, if it's more of a preference difference, then I wouldn't.
Like, give me an example.
Okay, so if, let's say this person is giving their child a type of food that I know is not good for the kid, I'd be like, hey, or like not healthy, or not healthy in the sense that like, oh, it's not as healthy, but maybe I've read a paper that it's poisonous or something, right?
Like it causes
stuff. It actually causes some sort of consequence. Then I'd be like, hey, I read this, like, I don't think like you should be giving your kid this because it blah, 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 right? But if it's like, hey,
Don't give them too much cake because it'll be fat.
Don't give them too much cake, or don't use this specific brand of formula because blah blah. I don't know, something very minor, just more of a preference difference. I probably wouldn't say it because that's ultimately your decision.
Yeah,
unless it's genuinely like something that I feel like you could be harming your kid doing, then I would say something. Yeah. And then if it was total stranger, I just wouldn't.
Oh no, total stranger.
Yeah, like that's not any of my business. Like, what am I supposed to say?
Unless you're like abusing the kid right in front of me.
And I think that happens a lot with the internet. Like there's a lot of creators who are family creators, right? They show their kids and everything. And whenever I read the comments, it's just, there's always a bunch of people shaming the parents for what they did specifically in the video, and there's a lot of parents who will record their gentle parenting, for example, or just situations of how they handled their kids' tantrums or whatever, right? And there's of course there's supportive comments, but as the internet goes, there's a lot of shaming comments. How do you feel about the internet?
Oh, so with kids, I think the internet's like a touchy subject.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, there's so many weirdos and creeps out there that
on the internet.
I don't see myself putting my kids on the internet.
Yeah.
And then you also have, like, I've seen videos on Instagram where the kid wants to have like a conversation with that parent, like a private, meaningful conversation.
Right.
And the parent is recording and the kid's like, "Mom, stop, please. I just want to talk." And like they're using their kids for social media or exposure or monetary stuff. Yeah.
And I think that's a whole nother conversation too of, that's a hot topic, right? I think a lot of creators have become famous because of their children. And there's a whole discourse and conversation about whether or not people believe that's okay or not. At the end of the day, that's not my kid. Yeah. Right. So if you want to put your kid, those consequences are your consequences. I'm not really. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit there and, be a hater and comment about it. Right. If I feel a certain way or I don't. Right. So yeah, I think I personally wouldn't. You wouldn't either. No. Yeah. I think that's just a lot for the kid. I think it wasn't the kid's decision personally. Like I get like when as a parent, oh my God, my kid's so cute. Like, people post Instagram photos of their kids. Like that's very normal. But but I think there's a line. Yeah. I think like occasionally like, hey, like, oh, my baby, right? Like I love my baby.
But if it's like your main subject on all your content, it's kind of weird.
And especially like in your example where the kid was like, hey, Mom, I want to talk to you about something, and she's like,
just, can you not record it?
Yeah, and you're just filming. I think that's a pretty extreme case of you probably shouldn't be filming. Yeah, that. Yeah, like your kid wants to talk to you about something, and the internet doesn't need to see that. Yeah, so I think there's a fine line between it, and people cross over it pretty easily. But then again, I've never been a parent.
It's tough.
It's tough. I'm not. None of these opinions really matter at the end of the day. Like that's their kid, right? And how I would do something does not mean how it should be for other people. And I think overall there's just so much that goes into parenting too that I at the end of the day have nothing to say, right? Yeah. Like I will never, at least not never, right? But as of right now, I don't understand what it's like to be a parent. So I'll never sit here and tell you what you should or should not be doing.
Yeah. And I think nobody's ever truly ready to be a parent.
I agree.
Like, even financially, like that's tough.
It is tough. Yeah. I think because some of my older cousins, they're around the age that they have kids and their kids are all pretty young. And it's weird seeing them with kids. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I realized, they're 30. So it's normal that they're having a kid, but it's just so weird to see them with a kid. It's ridiculous.
Soon you're going to have one of your own.
Who do you think's going to have a kid first? You or me? Me?
Yeah, I'm not having a kid.
What if I don't have kids?
And we're both kidless.
If I have a kid, I'm going to make you godfather.
I can't.
Why? Oh, can you be uncle?
I could be uncle.
Okay. How do you can be, is Is it Tito? Is uncle?
Oh, Tio.
Tio, yeah.
Yeah, Tio.
Yeah.
Tito's alcohol.
Oh. I knew that. If I have a kid, I'm making the kid call you Tito Nathan.
Tito's.
Tito Nathan. Tito. I go, Dad Tito.
Actually, the nickname that babies give me is Tayton.
Tayton?
Tayton. Because they can't say Nathan, they're like Tayton.
Oh, yeah. That's really cute.
In Spanish, it's Nathan and like Dan.
Dan. That's egg. Dan is egg.
Dan?
Yeah.
Bundan.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're going to call my baby Bundan.
Bundan.
Bundan Jr.
How do you say Lo Bundan?
Xiao.
Xiao Bundan.
Xiao Bundan. You're gonna just like see, like in 10 years, if I have a kid, right? You're gonna see a video of Nathan holding my child and going, Xiao Bundan.
Just one-handed. It's tiny.
Little stupid egg. That's child abuse. Listen.
I'm the problem.
You are the problem. If you do have kids, hypothetically, I'll babysit.
Yeah,
I'll tutor.
Free?
Yeah, free tutoring.
Oh, free tutoring?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, they got a future ahead of them.
Yeah. I'll tutor them for free.
I was scared to have kids because I thought it would be stupid. I have no fear now. I have kids.
I mean, it's a free service. What are you gonna say? No. Exactly. Babysitting plus tutoring.
Nice.
That's a good deal. That's a 2-for-1. That's a twofer.
Dude, I'm gonna have some kids so I could take that deal. I can't give up this deal.
Well, I think that conversation's for another time.
Yeah.
You never know. I think one day we'll look back at this podcast with kids. We're going to have kids of our own and just watch this podcast of how we don't want kids.
See, Jacob, I didn't want you then.
I don't want you now.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. We want little Jacob.
Anyways, that was a wild ride. It started off really sad. It's still a very sad story.
Very sad.
But I'm glad we found some sort of humor in it at the end of the day and found the points, and I think that's the whole vibe of EMS is we have crazy things happen and we find a way to find the positive out of it. I don't know how much positivity we found today, but
we make it.
Yeah. And on that note, that's it for today's episode. Stay safe out there. If you have kids, God bless you. Mom, thank you. Love you. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please like and subscribe to see more of our content. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them down below and we will do our best to get to them. Thanks for watching Egg and Bean Podcast.